This is the presentation that I had hoped to give last meeting, but have also in the interim presented to the public and in Rapid City. I have tried to pare it down a little bit, so I don't have you here for an hour listening to me drone on about stuff. But we'll jump right into it. This wanted to kind of help tie this back to the umbrella plan that was you guys approved back in I believe it was April of 2014 for the Black Hills Fishery Management Area, under the objective of determining the current angler demographics and preference for lakes and streams. The strategy 3.1 was to conduct a comprehensive preference survey of our anglers, and that's what this is in answer to. The way we went about selecting or creating the sample for this was actually a year-long process that incorporated on-site angler interviews starting in September 1st of 2013, and those ran through August 31st of 2014. These were randomly designed to account for location and time, and were performed by trained creel clerks. And essentially what, as far as the sampling aspect of this goes, they were asked if they would be willing to complete a follow-up survey. And of the just over 2,700 unique interviews that were conducted during this time, 94% agreed to the follow-up contact, and those 94% created the sample that we used. And we administered this survey during the fall of 2014. It actually started in September of this past fall. We sent the survey out using the preferred mode of contact that individuals indicated, so whether it was online or mail, whichever they preferred is how we sent it to them. And while this is a little bit different from most of our mixed modes, where we'll use both, in this case we only use the indicated preference, and you can see the breakdown in number of online and mail. We did use multiple contacts. We had adjusting for undeliverables and bad addresses. We had just over 2,200 folks in the sample. We received a 47% total response rate for 1,056 responses. Give you a breakdown of the demographics of our respondents. About 81% were South Dakota residents. Roughly 19% were non-resident, and I broke out that 0.2%, which were our international component. We asked folks how far they on average traveled one way to fish in the Black Hills, and as you would anticipate, there's a little bit difference between our non-residents and our residents, with non-residents on average traveling 575. The numbers in parentheses just represent that 95% confidence interval. Residents on average were traveling 60 miles to fish in the hills. We also wanted to know about folks who were Black Hills residents, so individuals who indicated their permanent residence was in the Black Hills. There's about 580 of those, so just, roughly half of our sample. 39% of those individuals indicated they did not travel outside the hills to fish. Of those who did travel outside of the Black Hills to fish, on average, they had typically traveled one way of 146 miles. I also gave you the median distance, which is just simply 50% of folks traveled 110 miles or less, and that's just to kind of help give you an idea that some individuals are traveling much further than others, which when you do that, the mean or that 146, typically that'll impact that. So jumping right into the questions, we started out with some questions that we typically ask on all our angler surveys. One of those being relative to all other recreational activities, including fishing, how important is fishing in the Black Hills to you? And you can see here that the majority of our respondents, with 74% say it's important or very important to them. You get about 19% where it's to some extent unimportant and 7% neutral. We also typically ask the type of fishing that's going on, the species that are targeted, if any. On the left here, you have, this is just indicating that the majority of our Black Hills anglers are targeting specific species. And then this table here on the right breaks out by large reservoirs, so that would be Deerfield, Pactola, Sheridan, and Stockade. It excludes Angostura and Belfouche in this case, and that's to reflect the management plans that the aquatic section has in place. Small ponds and reservoirs, and then streams. Just to point out here, for large reservoirs, the most preferred species was indicated, 27% indicated rainbow trout, 15.5% northern pike, then you get yellow perch, lake trout, and then your largemouth and smallmouth. Those are the top 5 most preferred for large reservoir. Small ponds, rainbow trouts on top with 51%, then coming in largemouth and smallmouth, bass at 11, yellow perch, brown trout, and then you have black and white crappie as rounding out the top 5. And then for streams, you can see here like approximately 94% of our stream anglers are indicating that some sort of trout species is their most preferred, with brown trout at 35%, rainbow trout just under that with 34.8%, followed by brook trout, then creek. There's a significant drop off here with creek chub being 2.1, and then other species. Here, this is just, the importance of fishing for that most preferred species. And again, without breaking it out for each individual, these light green bars are large reservoirs. The diagonal would be the pond and small reservoirs. And then streams are the dark green bar. And we're looking at just shy of 3/4 of our anglers indicate that it's important or very important to be able to fish for their most preferred species. Here, tried to come up with a way to show this without it having a gazillion bars across the across the slide for you. But we asked individuals what factors are important to their overall Black Hills fishing experience, and we listed 16 of them out, and they're here. And you can see individuals could, it was basically how important is each of these, so they're not going to sum to 100%, but what you can see here, the highlighted 75% of the items, so 12 out of the 16 items we gave, a majority of anglers indicated that this was important to their fishing experience. So and those range from anywhere from the beauty of the area, the number of quality fish they can catch, the size of the fish, access to fishing areas, and basically different things like catching and keeping their preferred species, catching and releasing preferred species. These were all important to at least 50% of our anglers. But you can come down, and even the bottom 4 here, the regulations specific to water, the hatchery fish, available accommodations, ease of boating access, those still were, you got ranging from 42% to 36% of folks still felt those were important. So not to imply that they aren't important. We also tried to narrow that down. So of those 16, what is the most important factor to your Black Hills fishing experience? And here you can see that having an uncrowded, undisturbed fishing trip was indicated as most important by 20%, and that was the one that had the most responses. And those go down. And I tried to rank them out here with the numbers, and so you can see you have several that kind of tie here and that for 12th, and but you get that uncrowded experience, the number of quality-sized fish, the beauty of the area, the preference of preferred species. Those top 4 are the same as on this back slide, top 4, but just kind of come out in a different order. But just kind of give you an idea of narrowing it down somewhat. We also asked individuals to indicate areas that they felt needed improvement in order to meet their needs for Black Hills fishing. And we gave them a list of, I believe there's about 15 items on that list, and just yes or no, check the ones you think need improvement. Pulling out the top 10 areas, number 1 with 40% felt that access to fishing spots needed improvement. Just behind that was catching large fish, ability to catch large fish, shoreline access, and you can kind of read on down through there, going down through to restroom facilities and the availability of that. We also, we do a lot of how satisfied were you with overall fishing experience. And one of the things is, if you, that backslide of the importance of these factors, and there's 12 factors, and there's a lot that go into that. What we were trying to get at this question was considering the number of fish caught, the sizes, and the species caught, how would you rate the fishing? So this is a little bit different from the satisfaction that we typically ask. And you can see here that you it's a similar trend regardless of whether we're talking large reservoirs, small ponds and reservoirs, or streams. But you're getting about 45% of your large reservoirs felt the fishing was good or excellent. About 56% of anglers on ponds and small reservoirs indicated that fishing was good or excellent, and then 57% for our stream anglers. And I just want to mention, and I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but large reservoir anglers were classified as individuals who had fished on large reservoirs within the past 12 months. So it would have been that same period that we were doing the interviews. And the same goes for ponds and small reservoirs or streams. So if they had fished on these areas in the past 12 months, that's how they are defined here. And then this is that overall satisfaction. So everything that goes into your fishing experience and your satisfaction of it. How satisfied were you with your overall fishing experience in the hills? And again, it's similar across all three types of water bodies. Large reservoirs, 68% satisfied, very satisfied. 70% on ponds and small reservoirs. And again, 68% of stream anglers were satisfied or very satisfied with their overall experience. Here, I couldn't come up with a very good way to make this not have a lot of bars, but what I've done is color-coded using a stoplight color scheme where yes is green, no opinion is yellow, and the red are no. And I've given the numbers here for whatever response had the highest proportion of individuals in that response. So the modal response is highlighted. And this is for large reservoir anglers in the Black Hills, their preference for fisheries management and what they thought of several items of management items that we put on. And you can see here at the top, 63% agreed with or preferred fisheries management on large reservoirs that focused on multiple species, so cool, warm water, as well as cold water species. Following up that, you've got 57% preferred fisheries management that focus on cold water species. You get down these next four: improving parking availability, establishing size restriction, increasing no-wake zones, and focusing on cool warm water species, which would be the northern pike bass. The cold water would be trout species. Here, while it's not a majority, your modal response is roughly in that between 42 to 46% or yes on those items. This improving boating access, 47% of individuals had no opinion regarding that. And then these bottom three, the majority of responses indicated that they did not prefer management on large reservoir that either increased or reduced daily limits or decreased no-wake zones. Jumping over specifically into stream anglers and stream management, we asked folks what they thought about the current catch and release only areas that we have in the Black Hills. Slight majority, 51% like or strongly like the current catch and release areas, with 11% disliking or strongly disliking, and about 38% were neutral to them. And then point out up here we asked folks how frequently they fished catch and release only areas in the past 12 months, and 53% of string anglers said that they had spent at least some time fishing in these areas. So the majority of folks were string anglers had fished in those areas. We also asked, their preference for whether they, the number of catch and release only areas in the hills. 39% indicated they'd like to see the number increase to some extent, so either increase a little or increase a lot. You had 9% who wanted to see it decrease to some extent. There's 38% stay about the same, which was your modal response here. But then there was another 14% who really had no opinion one way or the other. We also asked our stream anglers about their preference for stocking catchable size trout in select streams, which is the light colored bar. And you can see here you've got 75% who support or strongly support that. We also asked about their preference or their level of support or opposition for managing select streams for wild trout. And you can see you've got just under 3/4, so 73% support or strongly, sorry about that. Thank you.
I thought it was just me, Cindy.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And then when we asked for individuals about the, not only managing for stocking catchable size trout or selected areas for wild trout, what kind of fishing experiences did they prefer? Fishing in areas stocked with hatchery trout only, or areas that only have wild trout, or also, would they prefer having both opportunities available to them? And this is similar to that previous slide, with the majority of folks prefer to have both opportunities available to them in the hills. And then similar to what we asked on the large reservoir anglers, we asked of our stream anglers their preference for trout regulations in the hills. Same stoplight color scheme here. Yes is green, yellow is no opinion, and no is red. The majority of folks, 68%, preferred trout regulations that benefit wild trout. Another 55% prefer them that establish species size restriction on harvest. Here, the permit artificial lures only. The modal response is 43%, and it looks like roughly 35% were kind of against that idea. Catch and release only. Technically the modal response here is 39%, but I will tell you that the no category for yes, but the no folks on this one, that's about 37, almost 38% there. So it's almost a bimodal distribution there. 42% did not agree with permitting the use of organic bait. Again, there's roughly 35% agreed with that. Required the use of barbless hooks. 38% said no, and you're just shy of 35% yes on that one. But then you get 45% were against reducing the daily limits, and 59% were against increasing the daily limits. And that was specific to trout regulations. We also asked, there's several impacts, things that can have impacts to fisheries, and we asked folks to indicate what degree of what level of impact that they feel these items had on Black Hills fisheries, and that was on the far left here is loss of fish habitat, water quality, illegal fish introductions, aquatic invasive species, erosion or sedimentation, and then conflicting uses on water. And so these four here, the loss of habitat, water quality, illegal introductions, and the aquatic invasives, the majority of individuals indicated that they felt they had a major impact on the Black Hills fisheries. If you look at erosion, sedimentation, and conflicting uses on a water, the majority of folks feel like that either has a moderate impact or a major impact. So the anglers in the area do recognize that these impacts they perceive these to be having a moderate to major impact on their Black Hills fisheries. One of the things in working with the stakeholder groups out in the hills, one item that continually was brought up was the idea of establishing a voluntary habitat and access fund. And so we asked about the level of support or opposition for this particular concept. It was worded in a way that this really is just getting at the concept. It's not exactly how would we go about doing this, but more just the broad concept of the voluntary aquatic habitat and fishing access conservation fund. And at that conceptual level, a majority, 54% support or strongly support it. 7% were opposed or strongly opposed to the idea. We also wanted to find out about the level of support or opposition for stocking species, trout species other than rainbow trout, knowing that the level of the number or the extent of stocking rainbow trout would have to decrease in order to increase or to increase the stocking of other trout species. And and we broke this out. It's pretty similar regardless of whether we're talking large reservoirs, ponds and small reservoirs, or streams. But right around that 41 to 43% folks were neutral to it, and then you get similar right around that 41, 43, 45% area of folks were in support or strongly supported it. We asked individuals if they supported or strongly supported this, what type of trout species they'd like to see, and I can tell you it changes depending on the body of water we're talking about, but at the top, in all three cases, with about anywhere from right around 36%, so about roughly a third of folks indicated they'd like to see brown trout. And then off the top of my head, I can't give you the breakouts of all the other species, but that was the top one of across all three waters. So to just kind of sum that up, all that in a nutshell, the large reservoir anglers pretty much indicating that they'd like opportunities to catch both warm and cool water species as well as cold water species. Access improvements and the ability to catch large fish were the top areas indicated as needing improvement. Majority of anglers believe water quality, loss of fish habitat, AIS and illegal fish introductions have major impact on the Black Hills fisheries. Majority of string anglers support trout management that includes both hatchery raised trout as well as wild trout. And then as we mentioned at the very beginning, there are several factors that are important to the overall Black Hills fishing experience, not just a single one. With that, if you have any questions.
Questions for Cindy? Our next subject's subplans for the Black Hills streams and reservoirs, and I can see a couple of things in here where I would be scratching my head trying to figure out how to please the northern pike anglers on a same body of water where you've got cold water trout fishermen, and that's one of our problems out there. Somebody putting those northern pike where they think they ought to be.
Yeah, it's certainly a challenge. So.
Yeah, that's for sure. Nice job, Cindy.
Yep, thank you
very much.